Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 11th Annual Community Justice Academy. For those of you who are joining us for the third session, thanks so much for the last 2 weeks. We hope that you have found those very interesting and engaging. We've gotten some really great feedback. So I'm here to welcome you tonight. My name is Peg McLeish. I serve as the Chief of Staff for the Marion County Prosecutor's Office and am thrilled to be here with you. Usually I get to be behind the scenes, so it's great to be with our speakers tonight. So tonight we are going to be talking about homelessness and the intersection of homelessness and the criminal justice system. It is a complicated topic. I think you're going to find that our three experts we brought in are very well have a great understanding of all of the issues, but also some great experience to share with you. So to give you just some context of homelessness and how we interact with it in the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, we have individuals who are victims of crime, we have individuals who are witnesses to crime, and we have individuals who are accused of crime, who all are in housing insecure positions at certain times. So one thing that we have seen with those who are the accused or defendants in criminal cases is a high rate of recidivism, which is often due to their personal circumstances. So in the past year, our office created a quality of life unit, which we're excited to have Joel Schneider here to moderate, and he can tell you more about what that unit has done over the past year. But part of that was really to develop, since we saw the recidivism, we saw the many challenges that come from with those individuals and their personal circumstances regarding housing. We wanted to try to better address it instead of having them go through the criminal justice system, bond out, go back to the street or in housing insecure position, and they're in no better position, and often the victim or the community is also in no better position. So that is a lose-lose proposition that we wanted to address. We are very, very fortunate to have a lot of great service providers in Indianapolis, one of which is Horizon House. So one of our other speakers tonight, Nicole Wessling, is with Horizon House. And they've been an excellent partner in our quality of life division to really try to address some of those housing and security and other issues that these individuals face, to help simply communicate. Sometimes they may not have a phone, they may not be receiving mail, things that the criminal justice system communication system depends on, and also to ensure that they make court dates, or if there's a warrant that's been issued in another county, to notify us. So communication that that a lot of people take for granted is very challenging to those who are housing insecure. And so we're very fortunate to have a partner like Horizon House to help facilitate that. So a couple housekeeping issues. So we're going to go until 7 o'clock tonight. Like I said, we have three excellent speakers. So we will leave time at the end for your questions. Please feel free if you'd like to submit questions in the chat. As I've seen, a lot of you are welcoming each other, which is excellent. I know we all miss seeing each other in person, but feel free to use that chat with everyone to submit questions, or you can submit questions to just the panelists, and we will keep track of those, and we will be asking those to our panelists after they finish their presentations. And with that, I am happy to introduce Joel Schneider. Is a graduate of the George Washington University with a BA in psychology and political science and a law degree from the University of Cincinnati College of Law. He first worked in the Marion County Public Defender Agency, initially as a trial attorney, and then representing participants in Marion County's various problem-solving courts, which you may hear more about during this discussion. From there, we were lucky to have Joel as a deputy prosecutor in our office, as I said, with the newly created quality of life unit. So that unit really just got off the ground in April or May 2021, so it's still very new. Joel helped formulate the initiative, diverting those experiencing homelessness out of the criminal justice system and into treatment and services. Joel was recently appointed as magistrate judge of the Family Division in Court 16, presiding over family law, termination of parental rights, children in need of services, orders for protection, guardianship, and adoption cases. So we're very excited to have Joel, and he will also be helping moderate the discussion. Also with us tonight is Mitch Swidarski, who graduated from the Indiana University School of Law in Indianapolis in 2002. Other than a brief stint in the Peace Corps, Mitch has spent the majority of his professional career with the Marion County Public Defender's Agency. He's worked in every division of the agency, including 10 years in the major felony courts, and he was recently promoted to a felony supervisor role. In response to the prosecutor's office creation of the quality of life unit, Mitch has created a similarly unit in the public defender's agency so that the two agencies can work together to better identify and provide help to clients in most need of assistance. Mitch hopes to continue to work with the prosecutor's office and other local organizations to provide alternative resolution options to community members dealing with homelessness, drug abuse, and mental health issues. And we have Nicole Wessling. Nicole is the Street Outreach Manager at Horizon House, a nonprofit organization that connects individuals experiencing homelessness with integrated comprehensive services. In addition to managing Horizon House's street outreach program, Nicole coordinates the Professional Blended Street Outreach Team, a collaborative consortium of 20 organizations with a focus on outreach engagement, service coordination, and preparing pathways to housing for individuals living unsheltered or experiencing homelessness in Indianapolis. Nicole has been an employee at Horizon House since 2009. She graduated with honors from the IU School of Social Work with a BSW and MSW, with a concentration in mental health and addictions. Her professional background includes nonprofit management, program development, project management, collaborative partnership development, and strategic planning. So we have three excellent panelists that I am very excited to share with you. And as I said, please feel free to include your questions in the chat, and we will get to them after our presentation. With that, I will turn it over to Joel.
All right, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Peg. And I want to also thank everyone here tonight, all the CJA attendees that are spending an evening with us to learn about what's a very important topic to every panelist here, and hopefully everyone in the audience as well, to learn more and just get more information. And I guess the first thing I want to do is I want to ask Nicole, just so everyone is sort of operating on the same definition, to talk maybe what are the definitions of homelessness that you would consider, whether that's through your own personal experience, whether that's governmental definitions, whether that's Horizon House definitions. So Nicole, take it away.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Peg, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be a panelist. I would define homelessness as not having a fixed permanent housing option. Folks that are living unsheltered, we would define those individuals living unsheltered as living outside. Folks that are considered sheltered may access emergency shelter or safe haven, transitional housing. HUD's definition of homelessness is based on 4 categories. The first one is literal homelessness. The second one is imminent risk of homelessness. The third one is homelessness under federal statutes. And the fourth is individuals fleeing domestic violence. And so when we engage folks on outreach, they may be living unsheltered. They may be staying in emergency shelter. They may be staying with friends or family for a night or two, but for the most part, they don't have a fixed permanent housing option that is considered adequate or habitable.
Okay, and so as was done or said in the introduction, you do work for Horizon House. So could you maybe explain to the audience what Horizon House is, what services Horizon House provides? Who are you serving?
Sure. So Horizon House is a multidisciplinary agency. We provide a continuum of services from street outreach services, where we're mobilizing services to folks living unsheltered. We have a service center day room where folks can access food, essential supplies. They can use our address as their mailing address, showers, laundry, restrooms, telephone. We have a case management team and an employment program. And then we have a housing program. So again, we offer a continuum of services. We would consider it kind of a one-stop shop. We also have a co-located partner, Eskenazi Health Pedigo Clinic, that offers medical and mental health treatment services. And they are connected to our building. So folks can then access those services as well.
And if I recall correctly, that the unsheltered individuals that you serve, you call them guests, is that correct?
We refer to folks that are accessing services, neighbors.
Neighbors, my apologies. So maybe could you maybe explain the rationale behind why you call the clientele you serve neighbors?
I think the concept behind referring to folks as neighbors is that they are essentially our neighbors. They may be houseless, living unsheltered, but that we still consider them our neighbors. They're residents in our community without a home, without a permanent fixed house, so to speak. So, but we want to serve folks with hospitality, dignity, and respect. And so I think the concept really is about serving folks, within that framework of treating them with dignity and respect.
Okay. And how many neighbors do you serve on average every day?
On average every day, well, since COVID, we've had to modify our services. So pre-COVID, we were seeing at least 200, if not more, 250 individuals every day. But since COVID and since modifying our services, we're seeing about 120 individuals every day. And that's due to social distancing and our protocols around COVID.
Okay. And Mitch, I'm gonna take it to you for just maybe a general question about just the criminal justice system in general. So you have an hour to explain everything now. If you can inform our audience sort of what, I guess, a case looks like from its expectancy, I guess, when someone gets arrested to post-conviction. So if you could maybe explain to our audience that process.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be helpful.
If I'm going to do an hour, I need some of that hype music that we had going at the beginning just to kind of get warmed up. But briefly, basically, arrest with homelessness, most of the population, they get arrested for more minor offenses, trespasses, thefts, that kind of thing, alcohol-related, drug-related offenses. If they're arrested, a lot of them can be released if it's fairly minor. If it's something that they are brought in on like a warrant, sometimes there's a warrant issued for something that happened beforehand, they may get arrested a little bit later. But most of the people we see are arrested right after the offense. Generally, after they're arrested, they go through an initial hearing process. We have an initial hearing court. Our supervisor of that actually helps out with the quality of life unit as well. And she looks to see if she can find someone that has maybe a group home or a homelessness issue or a drug problem or something like that up front. So they'll go through there. They'll basically be advised by the judge in that court pretty much what their rights are, what they've been charged with, and they're all basically given a not guilty plea at that point in time. Most of these people are appointed to us, at least the people that are homeless. They can hire private attorneys. Some of the other clients do hire that. So after the initial hearing court, they're set for a pretrial, probably a month or so out, give the attorneys a chance to talk to the prosecutor, see what kind of discoveries out there, and then the case kind of gets going. So after that, depending on the case, some of them are very complex. If it's a murder or higher type charge, it could take a year, it could take 2 years, depositions, witnesses, discovery, evidence, that kind of thing. All of that unfolds over time. A lot of these other cases, someone's arrested for public intox, they're passed out in the street, that'll be a lot quicker. It shouldn't take very long. So those come through. We have the different court structure where right now we have a lower felony / misdemeanor division. Then we have a major felony division 2. So basically they spread out into the 2 different divisions. As they progress through there, a lot of them are released, especially in the lower division. And what we've seen a lot with, especially the homeless people, is they do pick up multiple charges. They come back and then they start it over again. So not only are they dealing with that one trespass or that initial case, they are released and then they pick up something else. So that's kind of what Joel was talking about beforehand. That's kind of where we are with criminal justice aspect. What are we going to do with that? I think Peg mentioned something about that too. You know, they're here, they're picking up another case that's at recidivism, and you know, you don't want to lock them up for a long period of time for a theft or for a trespass. But once you have 7 or 8 cases pending, you have to figure out what's going on, and they can't do home detention because they don't have a home, or they have transitional housing, or if they're put on probation, you know, they're having a hard enough time living a daily life. You crank up all those different things that they have to do, they're going to have a hard time getting through probation. So basically, we get put in a position then, before this quality of life unit was created, where our options are, you can do a guilty plea or you can do a trial. You know, those are pretty much where you're at. Guilty plea that will work with the prosecutor, you know, what's in this guy's best interest, or it can go to trial. We can try to work out the issues. And like I said, some of these cases, there just aren't any tribal issues, especially some of these really easy, basic homelessness type offenses. You're passed out on the street with a needle in your arm, or you're laying on a bag of drugs. I mean, it's going to be a hard one to fight. But again, we don't want to put those people in jail. We don't want to put those people on probation. So the great thing is they created this quality of life unit, which is perfect. And I think it's something we've needed for a long time. And when they, you know, reached out to me, it's just something we needed, and it's something we have to do. And this population just continues to just get pushed away and pushed aside. And there's been no real other alternative until now. And this is great because we get put into contact with people like Nicole and the Horizon House and other providers around the area. And this is something different. With the quality of life unit, basically we craft out some sort of diversion, which is kind of a motion to withhold prosecution type thing. I'm sure Joel's going to talk about that later, but we get an agreement with the state that, okay, based on what you need, do you need housing? Do you need to get your medications? You need to, you know, whatever it is, you need to do drug treatment, which a lot of them have to do everything you need to do. And we try to make it easier on them. Like Joel and I would go out to Horizon House, we'd go out around the community to visit these different places and kind of make it informal. I mean, are they doing what they need to do? Do they mess up? Yeah. I mean, these guys mess up a lot. It's just part of it. But the nice thing about this is they're not going to jail if they mess up. We're going to try again. We're going to try to put them in a position where they can succeed. And each one of these agreements is crafted just for that person. So if they do what they need to do, not only will the cases get dismissed, but they'll hopefully have housing, they'll have a job, you know, they'll have all this support lined up that they didn't have. And hopefully that'll help out with recidivism. I got another 40 minutes, Joel. You want me to keep going?
You can. I guess maybe a follow-up question on that. So do you find any kind of specific issues with an unsheltered population that you would find with, say, someone who has housing? I guess maybe perhaps areas of like contact and things like that. Like how do you and the attorneys you supervise find contact with clients that are sort of by definition sort of hard to reach? Like you can't necessarily send a letter to your client. So can you maybe talk about that and how you address those barriers that you find?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the hardest things. I think if we had good communication with them, sure, that's easy. We can call them, we can email them. But most of these guys, if they have a phone, it gets stolen or broken. They have nowhere to go, so we can't really go visit them. So we've really been using Horizon House a lot to go meet at Horizon House along with their help to go see our clients. And I think, you know, the worst part about it is a lot of, especially with COVID, a lot of them are just kind of floating out there. They don't have their little court card that says come back in a month or anything like that. So that was always the easiest way to deal with that, was they knew where to go. We can meet with them before court. Was it the best situation ever? No. I'd much rather be able to talk to them in my office or in person, but you know, we do that, and that's the way to kind of keep them on track. And COVID kind of threw everything off a little bit. So it's hard enough in general to reach out to our clients, but now it's been much, much worse. So we don't have that ability. And the problem is with that is if we can't reach them, they don't show up for court, judge eventually is going to issue a warrant out for them. They get locked up and then the whole thing starts over again. So we've been using Adult Child, Horizon House, all these different community providers that are working with our clients, and the people that they're working with reach out to us. And that's been so helpful, and that's been so much better. And, you know, it's invaluable. There's really no other way to locate these guys. If you're living on a different couch every night, or if you're living outside underneath the bridge or moving around, you know, when you're getting chased away by police, there's no way for us to find these guys.
And I think I'll add, like, from the court's perspective as well, that I think different judicial officers are handling the cases differently, in so much as they might, if a judge knows that a certain individual, it might be difficult for them to, because a lot of courts are still remote, as opposed to in person. So if someone doesn't have a phone, the judge is aware of that, either like through an attorney letting them know, they'll order them to come to court in person, which I think my anecdotal experience has a better rate of success than someone who is expected to attend virtual court. I guess I'll also, like Mitch did mention, as well as Peg and Nicole, about the quality of life unit. So I'll sort of talk about sort of the origins of it, and sort of what that unit does, as I used to be a deputy prosecutor in that unit, as was mentioned. So before the unit was created, so Marion County has various problem-solving courts. So what a model of that looks like, it's meant to divert defendants from the traditional model of the criminal justice system, as Mitch mentioned what that usually looks like. So there's, I want to say 7, if I do recall correctly. There's 2 drug treatment courts, there's 2 mental health courts, there's a veterans treatment court, and there's a reentry court as well. So basically what those courts operate, for the most part, with some deviations, that a defendant who's screened eligible for the program admits guilt, and a judge takes that admission of guilt and hangs that sort of over their head pending successful graduation of the program. And what it means to be successful in one of these programs, it means drug testing, usually twice a week, engaging in treatment with whatever their treatment plan is, working with a case manager that's usually assigned to the court, and frequent court appearances. Because when Mitch mentions these court dates, they're usually maybe 6 weeks to a month to 2 or 3 months out per court date. Usually in these problem-solving courts, at least in the initial stages, you're coming to court every week. So there's more accountability, and you have, like, a judge has more eyes on a participant in the program. So I think with the quality of life program, we wanted to creatively license some of the elements of those programs, but specifically tailor it for an unsheltered population. So what it looks like when someone is referred to one of these programs. So I guess I should go, well, yeah, back to my public defender roots, that when I was a public defender, if I was asking a deputy prosecutor for a diversion for one of my clients, usually the answer was no. And usually that was because they had some sort of criminal history. I would say a majority of the referrals for this quality of life program have some, if not a significant criminal history, but it's usually the same, basically quality of life crimes like trespasses, substance abuse related charges, thefts, things like that. So if someone is referred to the program, the quality of life unit screens level 6 felony and misdemeanors that are nonviolent. And I'd say a difference is that we will take referrals from anyone. And I should say we as the former we. The deputy prosecutors there will take referrals from anyone. So that can be service providers. That can be, so for instance, Horizon House has referred participants to the quality of life program. Deputy prosecutors can refer someone. The public defender agency can refer someone to the program. So we, IMPD can refer somebody to the program. So it is a wide mix. That unit will take referrals from anyone. So they'll fill out an application and a screening packet asking questions usually about their housing status, their treatment history, things of that nature, and what sort of goals they want to achieve. Because we want this to be, the program I think is intended, or at least with its creation, is to be a low barrier program, and then also a participant driven program. So if a participant is saying, I want to get stable housing, we will make that a condition of their program to work with providers to work towards stable housing. If they don't want stable housing or don't want shelter, which sometimes can be the case, we won't force that upon a participant, basically. So that's typically the referral process. If somebody is accepted to the program, and usually a deputy prosecutor will reach out for victim consent and prosecutorial consent. If they're accepted, a prosecutor will tender a diversion. They'll enter into that agreement, and the court will set a compliance date out, and there'll be compliance dates usually usually an agreement varies between 3 to as far as 9 months, where you're usually having monthly check-ins with someone. And that's a difference too, because normally when a diversion is offered and there's a compliance date requested, the court is usually setting those compliance dates. They're usually being set in court. With this program, it was intended to be designed to do compliance dates in the community. So we usually, when I was a deputy prosecutor, Mitch, myself, and Nicole, we would be meeting at Horizon House once a month to just check in for about usually 6 or 7 participants to see how they're doing on a Friday afternoon. But that I think it's better to have compliance dates in the community, because it gives us as attorneys a better idea of, because everything you see things on paper like, oh, so-and-so is going to Horizon House or so-and-so is going to this treatment center, but you don't know what it's like until you show up there and see what it is actually like. Another advantage of that is that you get to, if someone's not engaged with treatment, but they do show up to that appointment at Horizon House, there's a direct provider client like connection where you can say, hey, thanks for meeting with us. Go talk to your case manager at Horizon House. It just makes it easier that way. So I think those have some distinct advantages of doing things like that. I can only speak to, I would say, my time at the deputy prosecutor's office and what my unofficial numbers were in terms of, I had about, I want to say maybe 20 to 25 participants. And a lot of them, since I was only there such a short time, didn't really see that many. I only saw 6 cases to completion. 4 were successful completions. They graduated the program successfully and got their case or cases dismissed. 2 were unsuccessful for various reasons. So I would say I would gladly take a 4 to 2 success to failure ratio, especially when you're talking about a high risk, high need population. I've probably spoken way too much at this point. So I'm gonna maybe pass it off to Nicole again to see if there's anything, at least from a provider side, that you'd like to add about the quality of life unit.
Yeah, thank you. I would definitely say that I think the quality of life program project initiative has proven efficacy. I appreciate the harm reduction framework. It is definitely low barrier. And I think we've definitely seen a lot of success with that within Horizon House. Just last week, 2 of the prosecutors came into our service center and they were looking for one participant who hadn't checked in yet at Horizon House. And so the service center staff contacted me and I sent out an email to the PBSO team to look for him, and they were able to locate him based on an outreach encounter, transported him back to Horizon House, and then the participant was able to meet with the prosecutors. So just that collaborative partnership that we've been able to develop with the prosecutor's office has been so impactful, and I'm so appreciative of that. And it's just really helped, I think, streamlined the process of having a pending case. And that's not lingering, that's not a barrier. And if we can help them resolve that, then we can really, truly create those pathways for permanent housing placements that they can become self-sufficient and sustain their housing. And it's just been great. So I'm just glad that we've been able to establish that partnership and find really creative ways to resolve these issues in our community, or barriers. So thank you.
Mitch, do you have anything to add about defense attorney's perspective with the quality of life unit?
It's great. I mean, we love it over here. And most of our people at the public defender, especially in the misdemeanor level 6 unit, a lot of these people we represent are really good quality of life candidates. And I think this is finally something that we can do. And I know that they have all those other courts you mentioned, like the drug treatment court and the para court and things like that. But I like this because it's basically crafted for each person individually. We don't have a lot of the constraints of those other courts. And, I've been pushing it ever since we started doing this, however many months ago. I've been sending out major emails to big portions of our attorneys here, and they love it. I mean, they're all about it. And it's not just to get rid of cases, it's because they can see these clients that they care about finally doing something and taking a step in that right direction. I mean, to the point where we have attorneys that we're releasing clients to the attorneys, where they walk over and they go and they get them out of the jail. We had one guy bring Egg McMuffins and coffee to a few people that were released to him. I mean, it's kind of closing that gap. And as a public defender, that's what we want. We want to have our clients to be closer. And sometimes it's easy, sitting far away from them and not understanding what's going on with their lives, not understanding who they are. But this is great because it kind of puts you closer. And I think what you were saying earlier, being able to go to the facility, being able to go to the Horizon House and sit there with you and Nicole and Rance and all the other people over there and have our clients there. I mean, it's great. I see what's going on. I can see, oh, there's a computer room. This is where they can go do this, or this is where they go take their shower. And you maybe get a guy out of the shower one time, Joel. And there's one I really remember where we had a guy that was sitting there and he was about to be successful, but his only problem was he needed to get a medical checkup or do something with his medical. And luckily Horizon House had that right there. So I think that we sent him over, he came back in 5 minutes, he was waving around his little sheet and he got his stuff dismissed. I mean, that is what's great about the Horizon House. They provide so many things. They're like the perfect intermediary, until we get that one facility where they can live and work and learn and get treatment all together. They're the best place we have for that. And it's really great to go over there and see what's going on, and I had never seen that before. For however many years we send people there, we send them to other places. I never knew what that was like until this unit started. And now I get it. And I've met those people and I get to see my clients, not in jail where everything's yes, sir, no, sir, this, that, yes, your honor. It's like, you can actually sit with them. How are things going? What do you need? And that's how, Joel, you always start off the conversation like that, or you did before you left us, but that's how we usually get that going. And I think that it's so important for them to know that we care. It's not just, we're there to push you through. You're another number, you're going to get another conviction, and then you're going to move on to your next case. I think it shows them that we care and it makes them work. And I know that 4 out of 6 is a great success rate. And I know that they're trying hard. And I know some of them have easier time. I mean, if you're homeless for 2 years and you're 20 years old, it's a lot different from being homeless for 40 years or addicted for 30 years. I think that, it's a whole different perspective on that. And, we work with those guys, and that's what's great because they're not the same person. They're all different. They have different experiences. They have different trauma. No one chooses to be homeless. No one chooses to be a drug addict or mentally ill. That's just what happens. And they all kind of come together here. And this is something where we can kind of sort through that. And hopefully at this lower level, we can do that before it gets worse and becomes a major felony.
So I know we're taking questions at the end, but one just popped up, which is actually going to be a segue to what I was going to talk about a success in the program. So I'll actually talk about our first success in the program, and we'll tie in some more things after I guess I share the story. So our first graduate was someone who had a theft charge and stole from a big box store your basic necessities, clothing, food, things of that nature. And in the time of that crime to being referred to our program, he had a case manager through PBSO, which is the Professional Blended Street Outreach Team, which I'm going to have Nicole talk about a little bit later on. But he had a case manager who helped secure housing for him. So by the time he was referred to our program, he did have housing for not a long period of time. So there was still the chance he was housing secure, but it wasn't, I would say, necessarily stable housing, because there was a chance that he could have potentially backslid. But he was engaged with his treatment. He was going to school. And when he was in the program, he was just always great. Like, he was compliant with all of his treatment. He kept his appointments with his case manager through PBSO, like just had really good contact. And there was no hesitation in dismissing his case because he had done so well. And his case manager, his PBSO case manager, reached out to us, or not us, sorry, my apologies. The graduate reached out to his PBSO case manager and was like on the phone crying because he's like, I did it. Like, I that would, like, he was just so proud of himself for completing something because he didn't ever have those kinds of success in his life. And the case manager was sort of filling in like how important it was and how much it meant to him, because he had been chronically living on the streets. He had been robbed and beaten while he was housing insecure. So to have basically a 180 turnaround where he had housing, where he had where he was like going to school, where he had goals in his life that he was just ready to achieve. So like that, I think, is sort of the crowning success. And I think the other thing too that needs to be said is, well, I guess 2 points on that. One, success, as Mitch said, it is a sort of participant by participant person. So the goalpost for each person is going to be different. Is it someone who has 6 cases and is in this program and they don't get arrested for the 6 or 9 months that they're in this program? Is that a metric of success? Are they having housing? Is that the metric of success? Is a period of sobriety the metric of success? That's going to be different for each person. So I think those goalposts are different. And then the experience as a deputy prosecutor in terms of success or failure, someone who did come in with, I would say, housing or a voucher or something to get towards that goal, I think had a more likelihood of success than someone who didn't really engage in any services and things like that. That's, I would say, purely anecdotal evidence, but on the ground, that's what I would say all 3 of us would see and observe. So maybe Nicole, can you talk about, we've mentioned PBSO a lot, so can you maybe explain what that is, who members are of it, things of that nature?
Sure. So PBSO, as Peg mentioned in the introduction, stands for Professional Blended Street Outreach. And we, 2 of us, my former outreach partner and I, developed PBSO in 2013. And that really came about because there were so many different agencies that were doing outreach, but we were operating in silos. And so we weren't maximizing our resources, our efforts. We were duplicating services and our capacity. And so we were trying to figure out a way to like safeguard our capacity and maximize our time and our resources in our community. So we came up with this concept of PBSO to blend street outreach teams. And so, as Peg mentioned, it's a collaborative consortium of 20 homeless service providers. And we have about approximately 50 active team members. And I would say about 50%, 25 team members are on our weekly outreach schedule. And so every team is a blended team. So it could consist of, and we never do outreach solo. It's always a team of 2 or a team of 4 for safety reasons. So we could have somebody from the VA, Horizon House, Pedigo, and Wheeler on that 4-person team. So each service provider, street outreach worker, is bringing a unique skill set to that team. So when they are engaging folks living unsheltered, they can really maximize service coordination efforts and connect them, link them with services based on individual needs. And so it's unique in that way. We partner with the IMPD Homeless Flex Unit. They're a participating agency on PBSO. And so we utilize them a lot. Their approach is to not criminalize homelessness. And so they also take that street outreach engagement approach. And so we work very closely with them too, just to try to reduce barriers, remove barriers. And so I think, we've proven efficacy with that. And then in 2014, we were recognized by the City County Council. We received a special resolution acknowledging our professional street outreach practices and our standards. And so as I just mentioned, it's unique to our community, not only our community, but in all of the research I've done, I haven't found another community that does something like this. And we also, I'm going to plug our Instagram page. We have a PBSO Indy Instagram page if you want to check us out. But we're not funded. It's all voluntary. Every participating agency that participates on PBSO lends one of their staff to an outreach shift to participate on the outreach schedule. And so again, it's all about communication, coordination, and collaboration to really maximize our efforts, safeguard our capacity, and deduplicate services.
So if a PBSO encounters someone in the community, I guess what kind of triage are you doing? Like where is that person going? Are you doing nothing, like just letting them hang out there? Are they going somewhere else? Could you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So again, we are trying to mobilize services to folks. So that could look like, we're distributing water and food packs. For a long time during COVID, we were distributing PPE supplies. We also do the coordinated entry assessments to try to get folks connected with housing. And we're collecting, obtaining documentation to complete that assessment process. So it's a continuum of services. We're trying to engage and build rapport and establish trust, and that might take a while. Some folks are reluctant to engage in services, so we might not know their name for a year or 5 years or whatever the case may be. And I'm thinking of one particular example with that. But so it's that outreach engagement piece that's so critical. And then we can, share resource information and connect them with different agencies in the community. So we're kind of the info sharing, community resource education piece, as well as connecting them to services, coordinating services. We're doing housing assessments in the field, assessing them for medical and mental health issues. So yeah, kind of the whole gamut of services.
Okay. And there was a question in the chat about the PBSO about, are the teams operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or are there set times?
That's a great question. I wish we had that type of capacity. So we have an outreach schedule I send out every Friday. We have, and we categorize it as AM, PM, and then PM2. So we have a lot of AM teams, PM teams, and then we have 2 PM2 shift teams that go out at night. And then we also work with the faith-based street outreach teams that do a lot of weekend street outreach work. Again, just to try to communicate and coordinate and collaborate. But we are not out 24/7. I wish that we were, but we're out Monday through Friday.
Okay. I want to ask both speakers what mental health and substance abuse or substance use disorder, like what effects do those have on, I would say maybe Nicole, from your perspective as at Horizon House, and Mitch, from your perspective as someone at the Public Defender Agency as a defense attorney?
I'll go, Mitch, if you don't mind. So we encounter a lot of folks that don't want to engage in medical or mental health services, and we cannot force them. It's based on client choice, self-determination. And so that is a challenge, because unless they're in imminent risk to themselves or others, there's really not much that we can do. And a lot of folks that do experience mental health issues, concerns, it's just that repeat contact over time, and that outreach engagement piece is really important. So we do our best to plant seeds and connect folks with medical and mental health, but unfortunately we cannot force them into treatment.
Do you want me to hop on a little bit? Okay, yeah, I think that both of those issues make it more difficult. And I think mental health isn't just mental health issues. There are a whole bunch of different mental health issues, as you guys are aware. And I think that, if you have, a lot of these guys have some sort of trauma, or there's some sort of depression, bipolar, and as you go up the ladder, it can make it more difficult. I think that the most difficulty we've had is like paranoia, because a lot of those guys have trouble believing that we are on their side. They're sitting there with a prosecutor and a defense attorney. It's hard for them to sit there and think these guys are really trying to help me. So I think that they have some more difficulty doing what they need to do, and they won't go get treatment because they don't believe they have treatment sometimes. So I think that has been a very tricky one. People that do have that major paranoia going on, drug abuse. A lot of these guys do have drug abuse problems. Most of the cases we do take are either drug cases or cases that were caused by drug use. So that's part of it. But again, it depends on the drug and how long they've been on it. If you've been on meth for 10 years, or if you're on heroin, especially heroin, it's really, really hard for these guys to come off that. And it can look like they're doing a good job, but then they relapse, and then something else happens, and then they take that step back. And we worry about them. And the more people they have behind them, like Horizon House, or people out in the community that can watch them, the safer they are generally. But they have that time where they're out, and someone can be doing great, and next thing you know, they disappear, and we're all afraid, did they overdose? Is this person dead? Where are they? So for sometimes weeks, months, sometimes we don't know. And then they pop back up, and they could pop up at a different facility, or they may pop up with a new case, which happens a lot of times. And then that just complicates it a little bit more. So those are things that we see in a lot of our clients, and it does make it more difficult.
I know neither of you are clinicians, nor am I. However, and this is going to be an anecdotal question for both of you as well. So with for Nicole, how many neighbors would you estimate have a mental health diagnosis of some sort? And Mitch, how many clients of the public defender agency do you think have a mental health diagnosis?
I would say a large percentage of the folks that we're engaging on street outreach have either a diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health substance use disorder. Some folks have better manageability skills than others, but it is definitely a high risk, most vulnerable population in our community, for sure. And the housing insecurity just exacerbates that, because they don't have the means or the resources to take care of themselves and manage their health in whatever capacity that might look like.
Yeah, I think from our perspective too, it's a huge percentage. I think that there is a lot of mental health issues that are going through, a lot of our clients. I think that, again, like I said before, it depends. Some of them have more serious mental health issues, some have less serious mental health issues. But like Nicole said, if they don't have that support structure, they're not going to manage it. If you're homeless and you have all these other things going on, you have no stability in your life, you're not going to go and do a 30-day program or try to stay clean if you have no one that's in your corner saying you can do it, you can get through this. Everyone out there is trying to give you some spice, or trying to give you some meth, or trying to give you some heroin, or whatever it is. But if you have that, I think it makes such a difference. And if they have that stability, that housing stability, it all starts with that. We have one guy that I think he's been homeless for 2 years, and he was a meth addict. He has a place. And I remember we met with him, and he was so excited because he got a new bed. He had appliances. He hadn't had anything like that for a long time. And now things are working. He had a new job lined up. He was treating his mental illness. He was treating his substance abuse stuff because he had that house or that place to go. And I think that made a big difference. Percentage wise, I'm not good at giving percentages, but I'd say it's a really, really high percentage of our clients have at least some sort of mental illness.
So I want to shift gears a little bit about maybe a 20,000 or higher foot view of everything. So what do you think Indianapolis is doing better than other, I would say, comparably sized cities, or maybe even the rest of Indiana, within your, I guess, I guess on this topic of homelessness in the criminal justice system, like what do you think Indianapolis is doing right? Essentially.
Nicole, you want to go first or you want me to go?
Sure, you go.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a huge amount of experience with the criminal justice systems in other cities or states, but I do have a vague idea of kind of what's going on. And the one thing that I've been most impressed of is recently the progressive nature of the prosecutor's office to start these initiatives. You know, usually you're the office that kind of goes in there, we got to punish everyone, we got to put everyone behind bars. But the fact that you're willing to work with us and work with community providers to do these things is huge. And it's something, you know, you all started quality of life. This is something that I made kind of a shadow program to go along with that because it worked, because some of these clients are our clients. But, you know, I think that the progressive nature of the prosecutor's office is really pushing us ahead of a lot of cities. And I think, you know, there are a lot of issues. There's gun violence, there's domestic violence, but, you know, there's a huge amount of issues with homelessness. And I really think a lot of that was exacerbated because of COVID. A lot of people that were homeless became in worse situations. A lot of people that weren't homeless became homeless. And, you know, walking downtown Indianapolis during COVID, everything's boarded up. People are sleeping on the streets. You hear people fighting in the alley. You know, it's in a bad place, and it's not safe for them. It's not safe for other people. It's just a really bad situation. But because of what you're doing, we now have a potential alternative to try to help them out. And I look at it all from the criminal justice perspective, but I try to take that step back and look at it from a society perspective too. And, you know, they need help. You know, we're not just going to help out the people at the top rung or the middle rung that have good families, that have money and support. It's important. We can't function as a society until we get this segment of society helped. And it's not like they all need to be fixed. You know, they're good people. They have a lot of potential, but each one of them is different. And the best thing about this program and about what our prosecutor's office has done is now they're willing to sit there and look at these guys and say, hey, you know, this is not just another person to put in jail or another person to put on probation, a person to put, you know, wherever. This is someone we can help save, or help, not necessarily save. I think that that's kind of a ridiculous term. This is someone we can help fulfill who they are and become what they want to be and what they want to do, and help push them in that direction. And setting up with Horizon House, and I mean, that kind of puts them right there. I mean, that's kind of our go-to. This is the problem, start here, this is how you get where you need to go. And these guys are trying to do it. And I really think that from what I've heard, we're ahead of the game with that.
So I would just add to that I think this is a holistic approach. I mean, you really are looking at the entire person. How are they able to meet their basic needs? What's their background? What resources do they have access to? It's a non-criminalizing approach, which I just think is phenomenal, and I think needs to be acknowledged. That in our community, I think it's a movement, and I think we should really acknowledge the impact that it's had with, from a service provider, social work perspective. It's just really helpful that we can eliminate those barriers, address those barriers, and we have a partnership that we can work with folks to then create these pathways for housing.
And I'm going to modify a dreaded job interview question, but where do you see like this issue where criminal justice and homelessness intersect? Like, where do you see this issue going in 5 years in Indianapolis?
Well, I'll speak from my professional background. When I graduated with my MSW, I did my practicum at Superior Court 12 when it was on Virginia, and they had implemented a similar model. We were facilitating treatment groups, folks that were arrested for public intox or prostitution, low-level misdemeanor offenses. They could take a plea and they could participate in these treatment groups and then have access to resources. We had direct service dollars where we could put folks into treatment and help them, get some recovery support services, and then connect them with places like Horizon House. So my eyes kind of opened, back in 2009 to what that could look like. And then we started COP Force, which was the community outreach task force. We worked with Judge Collins at the time. And so she's since retired. So when the prosecutor's office reached out to me and we were able to develop this referral response process to reach out to the prosecutor's office and the public defender's agency and say, hey, we've got somebody, we're we're really close to housing placement, but they have this active warrant. How can we get this recalled so we can reduce that barrier, so that we can get them into housing? It was a no-brainer, and you guys were so receptive to that, which just makes our job, less challenging, and then gives folks hope. They're living outdoors, and they do have feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, and so it's our job to restore hope, and then this extension of that work just really solidifies that and help and improves that. So I don't know that I answered your question, Joel, but in 5 years, I think we, to expand this model would be ideal.
And I will segue off that, Nicole. I agree 100% with what you're saying. And I've been working on, we get emails often from you with these warrants with someone you're trying to get in, and the prosecutor's office has been great. We'll file the motion, but there's not an objection to lift the warrant. And, the key to make this work is to have everyone working together and everyone being on the same page. And it sounds like we are. And it sounds like, everyone wants to deal with this issue and wants to get it going. And it's definitely heading the right direction. This is something new. I've been a lawyer for 19 years now. And for so long, nothing like this was out there. The old way of looking at it was, you got to fight this, you got to fight that. But now it's kind of, okay, this is a problem we all face. This is society's problem. We have people that all believe in the same thing, regardless if you're a prosecutor or if you're a social worker, or whoever you are, or a defense attorney, and if that's how you get this started. And I think that's why this is starting to be successful. In 5 years, I say build off it. Look at the problems, look at some of the issues we've had. Transportation has been a major issue, trying to get someone from one place to another when they don't have a phone, or they don't have a bus pass, or they don't have a car and they can't get there. And our office has been helping out with that a little bit. We have a Lyft account now to try to get people where they need to go, but that's an issue. We're trying to get someone to their meeting with the doctor, that kind of thing, just as basic things. So I hope in 5 years that we can have something that takes all this stuff and puts it together, a facility that has everything, where your social workers are there, your treatment's there, you can live there, you can work there, you can eat there, you can learn there if you want to that's having something, making that part easier. To get these guys, to help them be successful, you need to make parts of their life easier. They have a hard time anyways. That's why they're picking up cases. That's why they're smoking drugs on the street. That's why they're, doing what they're doing. They don't want to do these things, but to help them make them successful, take care of the little things, take care of the logistics, let's fix that kind of thing. Let's push it in that direction. And from everything I've heard and everyone I've talked to, everyone wants to kind of do that. We want this that way. We don't really we have all kinds of different unrelated facilities all around town that kind of do things differently or treat things differently. And I don't know if the communications there, I know that they all believe in the same things. They all want the same thing. But if there is some kind of centralized way to get everyone on board, the more cooperation we have, the more success we'll have with this program.
And I would agree with that sentiment as well, in terms of, I think there are, from what I saw as a deputy prosecutor, a lot of great organizations doing wonderful things in the community, but there may have not been enough discussion between the parties to figure out necessarily who's doing what. There might have been a duplication of services, or there might have been significant gaps of care in certain areas. And I definitely know when I first started at the prosecutor's office, there wasn't really much involvement with the criminal justice. Yes, IMPD was, I would say, heavily involved, but not with attorneys or the courts. So there wasn't really much involvement with that. And I think having that kind of additional involvement has helped produce beneficial things, as Nicole mentioned, warrant surrenders, or Mitch mentioned as well, like warrant surrenders of getting people's warrants recalled. So that would be one less barrier. I know I, as a prosecutor, wrote a letter of support for one of the participants in the program, and that helped secure housing for them. So I think with more collaboration, I hope that's the vision I hope for in 5 years' time, that there's increased collaboration, because I do think there are a lot of great organizations and people in Indianapolis doing great things. I just think sometimes they're not talking to each other. But so I'm hoping in the future there will be more collaboration and more resources and time to devote to a cause that's, I would say, near and dear to our heart. I was going to say, I'll add one more thing. I was trying to end on a hopeful note, so I'll just end on a neutral note, hopefully. Because I mean, and this is, I guess, geared towards the future as well. So there is going to be a new Justice Center that's going to be built with a move-in starting next year. And one of the things that's going to be there, besides the courts, is the Assessment and Intervention Center. So could either Nicole or Mitch, could you talk about what that is and what its goals are?
Sure. So we call it AIC. So AIC is live. They are accepting referrals. We work with them often. Their focus is detoxification. And so they're free and it's accessible. It's close, which helps. And so before AIC was built, you all might know the Rubin Engagement Center. We would refer to that as REC. It was located off of Ohio Street. And so we worked really closely with them as well. But since AIC has moved locations and Eskenazi is now providing oversight, they're still doing the same thing. They have the same model. They're providing the same services. But yeah, it's great. Before that, we would use Harbor Lights, and there's a cost associated with their detox program. And that was the only detox program in Indianapolis. So it's great to have a resource that's local and free of charge. And their referral process is streamlined. And it's, yeah, we're lucky and grateful to have that in our community.
The only thing I'd like to follow up on that is AIC, the program's great, the facility's great, the people there are great. The only issue now is like releasing people to AIC or trying to figure out the transportation on how to get there. But I think once we move over to the Criminal Justice Center, the jail will be right there. So it's the perfect place for us to have is like an in-between place. So if they're released from jail, they can go there, they can detox, they can, get some help, have a safe place to stay, and then we can find a place for them to go next. And, I do want to put a plug in for our social workers. Our public defender social workers have been with us from the very beginning with this program, and they've been amazing. And they're usually the ones that find that next step program, the next one to go to from AIC or from wherever. So for us, as from our perspective, that would just give us a little more time and know exactly where they're at, know that they're safe. We can meet with them there, and then we can move them on to the next place. So we're really excited about using it more. It's a great place. And I think that once we actually end up over there, I think we'll be able to use it even more.
So we have about maybe 3 minutes left before we start taking questions. Are there any parting thoughts that Nicole or Mitch that you want to impress upon our active and attentive listeners this evening?
I mean, I could say something. Just having this out there, it gives you, it sounds stupid, but it gives you some hope. And these guys, I think Nicole mentioned it, a lot of them, they get stressed out, they lose hope real fast. When you have nowhere to go or nothing behind you or no one there to help you out with it, it's really hard to be successful. And it's really easy to drift back into the easy things, do drugs or whatever it is. If you have mental illness and you're not being treated, it's easy to go that direction too. But I'm really happy with this program. I'm happy with all the people involved. I'm really happy with the Horizon House. They've been extremely helpful. Everything they've done, they find our clients, you know, we'll get an email or a call from them any time of day if our clients just show up and they're willing to modify our appointment times. And then the prosecutor's office to reach out to us to start this program and then, you know, basically work hand in hand with us. I think it's amazing. And I want it to continue to be successful. And I think, yes, we will have blips on there where it's going to be unsuccessful and people that will have trouble and will have to change things up. But I really think that the nature of the program, that it's fluid and that it focuses on each individual, I think is so important. And that there's so many people out there that really want this to happen. So, you know, from our end, I would do whatever it takes from our end. I know Joel would do the same thing, and Nicole, and there's so many people out there that want to do this. So I thank all of you for doing this and, you know, helping out our clients.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment. We're so appreciative and grateful of the partnership that we've been able to develop with the prosecutor's office and the public defender agency. I think we've really solidified that in the past year, especially since last fall, I guess, late summer. So the silver lining in 2020 was definitely that partnership. I think without, you know, if COVID had not happened and the courts had not closed and this didn't become a significant barrier for our folks, I don't know, it may not have, you know, we may not have solidified that. We may have just continued to operate as usual, but because of that, you know, it was like, how do we figure this out? How do we address this and resolve this? And so, yeah, I'm grateful and appreciative of the work that we've been able to do, and I think it's been impactful.
Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes left. And so we'll turn, it seems like there are a decent amount of questions. So Peg, I'm not sure if you want to ask or I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, we can field them together. There's a couple things I wanted to reiterate. Mitch, I really appreciated talking about stepping back and seeing this as a societal issue, because it's a social problem, right, that we're trying to address. And I think it's important, the context of this conversation is the criminal justice system. So we're talking largely about adults, but there are kids involved and families and homelessness. And this is an issue that schools are challenged with addressing. Health providers are challenged with addressing. And so, so I know there were a couple of questions here related to juveniles and children. And while that certainly does factor in, it's not the focus really of our criminal justice discussion at this time. But I'm sure that if you'd like to follow up with Horizon House or other service providers to learn more about the children who are experiencing homelessness, I think that that would be an excellent thing to follow up on. So one thing I wanted to ask, I thought was really an interesting question, is talking about involvement of other organizations. So this might be a Nicole question, but are churches involved? What's your working relationship? Obviously the outreach team, the street outreach team is a consortium, but can you give them an idea of just kind of that landscape of service providers and those who are looking to assist them?
Sure. So I would say, back in 2010, we did not have a collaborative working relationship with a lot of the faith-based organizations. But quickly we learned that, in my experience, we learned that that's necessary to work together. They have relationships with folks differently than we do. And so they're able to engage with them differently. And so we work really closely with Tear Down the Walls Ministries. They've been in operation for 20 plus years. Food for Souls. I'm trying to think, I don't want to leave anybody out. Meet Me Under the Bridge, Kathy Albright. I saw Donna Hawkins is on here. So we worked really hard to develop those relationships, because a lot of times they can reach those folks that we're unable to reach, or they know where they can be located, or they might, know what's going on with their situation more readily than we do. So we have to collaborate. We have to work together, and this has to be a collective effort.
Thank you. And there were a couple of questions about funding for Horizon House and if there's cost for services or treatment. Would you like to speak to that, Nicole?
Sure. So we receive private funding, monetary donations, public funding. We're a nonprofit 501c3. We do have a contract with INDOT that we developed, I want to say, and this year's been a blur. A couple of years we've had this contractual agreement with INDOT. We have a street outreach worker that is dedicated to responding to referrals, folks that are staying on their right-of-ways, underpasses, bridges. So that's a state level contract, but mostly private and public funding. And there is no cost for services at Horizon House or at Eskenazi Health Pedigo Clinic.
Thank you, Nicole. Joel and Mitch, in your experience, is there any common demographic that you see? There's some questions on here, male versus female or age, for specifically, I assume the question is for the defendants.
I guess I can address that one since I do work hand in hand with the defendants all the time. I'd say no. I mean, I think that mental illness can affect anyone. I think that housing challenges can affect anyone. I think that drug abuse can affect anyone, across the line. We have people that have heroin addiction problems that were pre-med majors at Butler that get onto heroin and become homeless, or they have nothing. I mean, just like that. So it doesn't matter if they're rich or if they're poor or where they come from. I really think that this affects everyone. And I think that it's important, that we treat it that way. And again, like I said before, I don't want to keep repeating myself on this, but that's why it's so important to look at each case individually.
And I would add with the Quality of Life program, it did run the gamut in terms of age, race, gender. There wasn't, I guess, one population or like one demographic that I think, like it wasn't, I know, because there were some questions for like male to female. And I mean, all of the deputy prosecutors that are in the unit had, I would say, roughly equal numbers. Perhaps maybe it skewed a little bit more towards male defendants than female. But that being said, I would say it was roughly equal numbers. But we do, in the application for applying, we do ask demographic questions just to monitor those types of things. Unfortunately for tonight, as I'm also no longer a deputy prosecutor, I don't know what those numbers are currently.
Peg, I can answer from an outreach perspective. So I work really closely with CHIP, and I coordinate the annual point in time count. We create team assignments, and then they cover every quadrant of the city, and then we kind of sub-quadrant the county. And so the report came out a couple months ago, and if folks wanted to look at that report, they could Google the 2021 PIT count report. But based on those numbers, it looks like our count was 1,928. And the majority of folks were male. 1,300 were male and about 600 were female. And then the majority of folks were in the 35 to 60 age range. So if folks wanted to look at that, do a deeper dive into demographic data, they could check that out.
Excellent. Thanks for the resource. Also, we have a couple questions about language access. I can speak from the prosecutor's side. So we serve victims and witnesses in 14 languages in 2020. So that gives you just an idea of the challenges that we have with language access, but we take it very seriously. So we have a Latino services division. We have 2 court certified interpreters for Spanish speaking victims and witnesses, but we also use a service called Luna Language line so that we can have interpreters of any language available. Was curious, Nicole and Mitch, if in your respective areas, if you also have language services that you're able to address.
Go ahead. We do have a couple staff on site that are able to interpret for folks Spanish speaking bilingual capacity. So that's helpful for sure. It's not, we don't have enough capacity, I will say that. So our capacity across the board, I think, is low, but yes, we do have a couple staff on site. Their role isn't specific to that, but they can lend assistance when needed.
And we have several full-time interpreters that speak Spanish fluently, and then we also have a Burmese interpreter as well. And then if it's a different language outside of that, we also use, like Peg said, that same language line, the Luna services, and that generally is very helpful.
Excellent, thank you. We did get a request if you, if the panelists could post your contact information for follow-up, that would be great if you don't mind, but we can always share that later as well. So excellent. So I think we will just wrap up. Any last kind of parting thoughts that each of you would like to share? I know one thing, we have a really active audience. They'd like to be engaged. They'd like to know how they can help. So if there's any kind of call to action you'd like to share with them, this would be a great time for it. Nicole, we'll start with you.
Sure. If folks are interested in helping, donating, we definitely could use supplies, especially as we approach winter months. And I think I shared a couple different materials that can be distributed, but if you wanted to check out our website, we have a needs list section, a space where we update that frequently based on most needed accommodation materials. And so we would be grateful for your generosity and your willingness to help.
I think from our perspective, it may be a little more difficult with the defense representation, but from the quality of life and that perspective, I think that one thing we need is to know that you're out there. You know, if you operate some sort of organization that can help us, or if you know of someone out there that can do that, or if you have work programs where people can go work maybe, and you have some sort of bus that can take them there, if you have community service things that you need done, let us know, because the more resources we have, the more likely we can help these people get successful and get through this program and get into a better position in life. So, you know, feel free, reach out to us, because we're, like I said before, this is always changing. This program just started a few months ago and we're trying to make it better. And the more resources we have and the more people out there that are willing to help out in whatever way, then I think the better.
And I guess I would add, I mean, now, I guess having been a grizzled veteran on all sides, both defense, prosecution, now on the bench, I think it's important to have, I think, a understanding and compassion of sort of the issues that are going on in our community of what's going on. So, I mean, I commend all of you for attending tonight and sort of getting a better understanding. Hopefully you did learn something new this evening. So it's just, I think, taking anything you learned tonight and just putting that into practice and how you live your life going forward, whether that is finding volunteer opportunities or donating something to either Horizon House or another organization within your community, or just learning more and looking at some of the websites that I think have been posted in the chat already. So just getting a better understanding, because I think that'll have a better impact for our community and our society as a whole. So this is a great first step. So I encourage you to build upon that.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for your generosity with your time and expertise and sharing it with the prosecutor's office and with this audience. And thank you for your partnership. This obviously is a program that would not operate if we weren't all working together. And I think I'd be remiss if we didn't also give a shout out to IMPD's homeless unit. They're focused on downtown, but they have been an excellent partner in this process as well, and we are in constant communication with their officers. So I want to make sure that they get the credit deserved there as well. So again, I'm going to wrap this up. This is our third of 4 sessions, so we hope that everyone will join us next week. So Wednesday, October 27th, we're going to be talking about redlining and the lasting impacts of redlining. So redlining is a historically discriminatory practice that was involved in predominantly residential mortgage loans, and we'll share some information about the specific neighborhoods in Indianapolis that were considered red line areas. So that was a typically racially divisive issue in a way that some neighborhoods have continually be underfunded, and the lasting impact with poverty, health, education, and of course the influence in the criminal justice system. So we're excited to welcome Denisha Posey, who is with Ivy Tech and teaches a class about the redlining and other property issues at the law school, as well as Amy Nelson, who's with the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana. So they'll be doing our presentation next week. And also one last reminder for those who attend all 4 nights, we will have t-shirts again this year. We can't pass them out at our ceremony like we like to do, but we will get them in the mail to you. So so please stay with us. If you've been here for 3 sessions, please stay and come back for one last night next Wednesday. So one last thank you to all of our panelists, Mitch, Nicole, Joel. It's been great to have you with us tonight, and thanks for everyone for attending. We will see you next week.